the Alpha King's heir cried each night, until a maid uncovered his mother's hidden letter. At night the air was thick with mist and the scent of rain. In the highest tower, overlooking the roaring sea, the heir to the Alpha King, Prince Kale, lay awake. His room was large but cold and empty, save for the heavy drapes that muted the storm outside. The prince had no friends, no laughter, no warmth, only shadows. Kale had not slept properly in years. Each night he wandered the halls, wandering aimlessly in the silence of the castle. He did not cry out for anyone. The servants whispered of the heir's sorrow, but none dared enter his chambers. Only the wind knew the sound of his tears, echoing faintly against the stone walls. His father, the Alpha King, ruled with an iron hand, and even the slightest hint of weakness was met with disdain. Kale was expected to be strong, cold, and fearless, but inside he felt as fragile as the storm-battered glass of his high windows. No one knew the reason for his sorrow. Some said it was grief for his mother, the late queen, who had died when he was very young. Others whispered that the prince had inherited a curse, though no one could say what it was. Kale himself did not know, only that every night the shadows seemed to grow longer, pressing closer, and he could not escape them. It was in these lonely corridors that Lyra, a young maid, first noticed him. She was quiet and small, but her eyes were sharp and curious, able to see more than most did. She had served the castle for years, dusting the halls, carrying trays, and sweeping floors, but she had always felt an invisible boundary between her and the royalty she served. Still, when she noticed the prince moving through the darkened hallways, her heart ached for him. He seemed like a bird trapped in a golden cage. Lyra had always been careful. She knew her place. A maid should not speak to the prince unless spoken to, and she certainly should not draw attention. But something in Kale's posture, the way his shoulders slumped, the way his hands fidgeted, the way his gaze wandered endlessly to the far wall as if expecting someone who would never return, made her pause. She found herself lingering near the corridors of the high tower, pretending to arrange tapestries, pretending to dust, while watching the prince. One rainy night, Lyra moved quietly down the stone hallway, carrying a tray of warm tea for the prince's study. The wind whistled through the cracks in the windows, rattling the panes, and the storm outside seemed almost alive. She knocked lightly on Kale's door. "Your Highness," she said softly, careful to keep her voice low, "the tea is ready." There was a long silence. Then a voice, quiet and hoarse, answered, "Leave it on the desk." Lyra stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by a single candle that flickered as if struggling to survive the storm. Kale sat at his desk, hunched over an empty sheet of parchment. His dark hair fell over his forehead, and shadows hid his face, but she could see the strain in his posture. She placed the tray down gently, avoiding eye contact. Kale barely moved, only picking up the cup and taking a slow sip. She wanted to ask if he was all right, wanted to say something comforting, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she just stood there, pretending to adjust the chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the wind howled and rain pounded against the stone walls. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. Then Kale spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "Do you ever feel trapped, Lyra?" She froze. Her name had barely left his lips before she realized how private this moment was. I suppose," she replied cautiously. "But we all have our duties, Your Highness." Kale let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "My duty feels heavier than the heaviest stone in the castle. I cannot sleep. I cannot rest. I am tired of pretending." Lyra swallowed, unsure of what to say. She had always imagined that royalty lived perfect lives, filled with luxury and power, but the truth was so different. The prince's pain was raw, deep, and real, and despite herself, she felt drawn to him. That night after she had left, Lyra could not stop thinking about him. Something whispered in her heart, urging her to discover the secrets he kept hidden. And perhaps, if she were brave enough, she could help him. Days passed, and Lyra continued her careful observations. One afternoon, while cleaning Kale's study, she noticed something unusual. Behind a tall bookcase, the wall had a slight gap, almost invisible. Curiosity prickled her. She pushed lightly, and to her astonishment, a small hidden compartment swung open. Inside was a letter, carefully folded and sealed with wax. Lyra's heart raced. The seal bore the Queen's symbol. She had heard stories of letters the Queen had written before her death, letters that could reveal the truth about Kale's birth, about his inheritance, and perhaps about the mysterious curse. No one had seen this letter in decades. She held it gently, feeling the weight of history in her hands. She knew she should leave it untouched, but her fingers itched to unfold it. Perhaps the answers she sought and that Kale sought were inside, but she also knew the dangers. If anyone discovered her, she could be punished severely. Still, she could not resist. The next night she returned to the tower, hiding the letter in her apron. Kale was already there, staring out the window at the stormy cliffs. He did not notice her at first, but she felt a strange connection, as if he could sense her presence even without looking. "Your Highness," she said softly, placing the letter on the desk. I found this. Perhaps it belongs to you." Kale turned, his dark eyes searching hers. For a long moment neither spoke. Then slowly he reached for the letter. His fingers brushed hers and a strange warmth spread through the room. This could change everything," Kale whispered almost to himself. "But I do not know if I am ready." Lyra's heart thumped. She wanted to say something, to reassure him, to tell him that he could face whatever was inside the letter. But words failed her. Instead, she nodded quietly, standing close yet not daring to touch him again. That night, as the storm raged on outside, Kale opened the letter. The wax cracked softly under his fingers. Inside were the Queen's words, written in careful, flowing script. They spoke of a curse upon the royal line, of secrets kept to protect him, and of a truth that could set him free, but only if he was brave enough to face it. Kale's chest tightened as he read. Memories of his mother, of whispers in the court, of dreams that left him trembling, all came rushing back. He could feel the weight of generations pressing on him. And yet, there was hope. For the first time in years, he looked at Lyra with something other than sorrow. There was trust, a spark of connection, and perhaps even longing. "Why did you bring this to me?" he asked quietly. Lyra hesitated. "Because I think you need someone who believes in you, Your Highness, even if no one else does." Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. He did not answer immediately, but the silence was not cold. It was filled with something fragile, something unspoken, a bond forming in the shadows of the tower. Outside, the storm continued, winds battering the castle and waves crashing against the cliffs. Inside, a prince and a maid faced a secret that could alter the fate of a kingdom. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Kale felt the stirring of hope. But the letter was only the beginning. Its words hinted at dangers yet unseen, enemies lurking in the shadows, and trials that could test both courage and heart. Kale could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on him, and he could feel Lyra's eyes on him, steady, unwavering, daring him to rise. As the candle flickered and the storm raged on, Kale realized one undeniable truth. His nights of silent suffering were not over, but they would no longer be endured alone. And somewhere deep in his heart, he felt a spark of something that had long been buried: trust, courage, and perhaps the faintest whisper of love. The hidden letter lay on the desk, waiting. And so did destiny. The storm had passed, leaving the castle of Eldrath drenched and silent. Gray clouds still clung to the cliffs, and the sea below roared with unrelenting fury. In the high tower, Prince Kale sat by the window, the letter from his mother open before him. He traced the Queen's flowing script with a trembling finger, reading and rereading the words. The letter spoke of truths that had been hidden from him all his life. It spoke of a curse upon the royal line, an unseen darkness that could cloud the hearts of heirs who were unprepared. The Queen had written not to frighten, but to prepare him. Cale's chest tightened with the weight of her warning. Yet amid the fear there was hope. The letter hinted at a path to freedom, a way to break the darkness that haunted him. Lyra appeared at the threshold, her hands folded carefully in front of her. She had been waiting outside, unsure if she should intrude again. But when she saw the prince's pale, drawn face, she stepped inside softly. "You read it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale looked at her, eyes dark and shadowed. "Yes, I had to." He paused, swallowing hard. I did not know she left me anything. I did not know she thought of me at all in her final days." Lyra approached cautiously. "She loved you, Your Highness, and she believed in you. That is why she wrote this letter." Cale's hands clenched the parchment. "Believed in me? Do you think I am strong enough to face what she wrote? Do you think I am worthy?" His voice faltered. Lyra stepped closer. Her eyes met his, steady and full of quiet determination. "I think you are stronger than you know, and you do not have to do this alone." For a moment, Cale simply looked at her. The storm outside had left a silence that pressed against the walls. He wanted to trust her, to confide in her, but the walls he had built over years of grief were strong. Still, there was something about Lyra, her courage, her gentleness, that called to the part of him that had almost forgotten how to hope. "Will you help me, Lyra?" he asked finally, the words tentative, almost a whisper. She nodded. "Always, Your Highness." From that moment, a secret alliance was formed. By day, Lyra continued her duties as a maid, unseen and unnoticed. By night, she helped Cale decipher the hidden meanings in his mother's letter. They spoke in hushed tones, their conversations heavy with tension and longing, and every word brought them closer. Cale discovered that the letter did not only speak of a curse. It also hinted at enemies within the castle, those who would see him fail. Ambitious nobles, servants with hidden loyalties, even members of the royal guard could be working against him. His father's court was a place where power was tested, and weakness was punished without mercy. Cale had always felt alone, but now he realized the danger surrounding him. Lyra became his confidant, his guide through the dangerous world of the castle. She taught him to watch, to listen, and to trust his instincts. In return, Cale allowed himself to lean on her presence, finding comfort in her calm and strength. Their bond grew quietly, a fragile thread in a world full of shadows. One night, as the full moon cast silver light across the castle's stone floors, Cale led Lyra to the library, a vast chamber filled with ancient tomes and scrolls. "If there is a way to break the curse," he said, "it is here in these books. Somewhere there must be a record of my mother's studies, or something she left behind that can help me." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the shelves. "Then we will find it together." They spent hours in the library, moving quietly from shelf to shelf. Occasionally, their fingers brushed as they reached for the same scroll, and a spark of warmth ran through Cale. He caught himself looking at her more often than the books, admiring her quiet intelligence, her courage, her unwavering presence. Finally, Lyra found a scroll bound in faded leather, marked with the Queen's seal. Her hands trembled as she handed it to Cale. I think this belongs to her. Perhaps it contains the instructions you need." Cale opened the scroll carefully. The parchment was delicate, worn by time, and filled with symbols and instructions that hinted at rituals, charms, and tests of courage. It spoke of confronting fear, facing the darkness within, and trusting the heart above all else. Cale read aloud and Lyra listened, her heart beating fast. "It says, the curse is not broken by power alone," he murmured. "It is broken by courage, by love, by choosing to face the shadows instead of hiding from them." Lyra reached out, placing her hand over his. "Then you are already beginning," she said softly. "You are facing it, Cale. You are not hiding anymore." Cale's eyes met hers, and he felt an ache he could not name. He wanted to say something, something that had been trapped in his heart for years, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded, feeling a warmth that went beyond the candlelight. Their nights together became a ritual. Kale would confide in Lyra, and she would guide him through the dark paths of the castle and his own fears. Each night, the bond between them deepened, quiet and unspoken, yet undeniable. The prince who once cried alone now had someone who truly saw him. But even as they worked together, danger lingered. Whispers in the corridors, shadows that seemed to move of their own accord, and rumors of nobles plotting against Kale reached their ears. The curse, they realized, was not only a personal burden, it was entwined with the fate of the entire kingdom. One night, Kale confided in Lyra about a dream that had haunted him for weeks. "I saw the throne, Lyra," he said, his voice low. "But it was burning and I was alone. Everyone I trusted, everyone I loved, gone. I tried to reach them, but my hands went through shadows. I woke up screaming." Lyra's hand found his again, and she squeezed it gently. "Dreams are warnings, not truths. You are not alone anymore, Kale. And I will not let you face this by yourself." Kale looked at her, his eyes searching. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe in someone outside of himself. He wanted to lean closer, to tell her how much her presence meant, but the fear of courtly rules and their different worlds held him back. Their quiet connection was soon tested. One evening, as Kale and Lyra returned from a secret meeting in the library, they noticed a flicker of movement in the hallway. A shadow passed quickly, disappearing before they could identify it. Lyra's heart raced. Someone was watching them, tracking their secret meetings. "We are not safe," Kale said, his voice hard. "The letter warned me of enemies. I think someone knows about us." Lyra shook her head, trying to steady herself. "Then we must be more careful. We cannot let anyone know the truth about the letter or about us." Kale's gaze softened as he looked at her. "I do not want to hide from you, Lyra. Not anymore." She met his eyes, and for a brief, shining moment, everything else fell away, the castle, the shadows, the storm outside. There was only the two of them standing together in the quiet, fragile safety of the high tower. But fate was not done testing them. That night, as Kale prepared to read more from the Queen's scroll, a loud knock echoed through the corridors. "Guards." Lyra froze, and Kale's heart sank. Whoever had learned of their secret was bold enough to confront them directly. Kale tucked the letter into his robes and moved toward the door. Lyra followed, keeping close but careful. The hallway was dark, lit only by the moonlight streaming through narrow windows. A figure stepped from the shadows, a servant Kale had never trusted, his expression twisted in suspicion. "You should not be here," the figure said. His voice was low and threatening. "Leave this tower, now." Kale's chest tightened, but he did not step back. "This is my chamber," he said quietly, "and I will not be intimidated." Lyra stood beside him, her presence steadying him. "He is right. No one can stop him from being who he is," she said firmly, her eyes meeting the intruder's. The figure hesitated, then bowed, retreating silently. But the threat was clear. Someone in the castle knew about the prince's secret and the letter and the bond he shared with Lyra. The danger had grown closer, and they could no longer act without caution. That night, as the moon rose high above Eldrath, Kale and Lyra sat together in the quiet of the tower, the letter and scrolls spread before them. The prince finally allowed himself to speak the truth of his heart. "Lyra, I do not know what the future holds," he said, his voice low, trembling slightly. "But I know I cannot face it alone. You give me courage I never thought I had." Lyra's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "And you give me hope, Kale, hope that even the darkest nights can end with dawn." They remained in the tower long after midnight, the candlelight flickering around them. Outside, the castle was quiet, but the shadows held secrets yet to be revealed. And Kale knew that with Lyra by his side, he was beginning a journey not only to face the curse, but to reclaim himself and perhaps, one day, the throne. The night stretched on, filled with whispers of danger and promise, and in the stillness of Eldrath, a prince and a maid discovered that courage and trust could shine even in the darkest corners of the world. But as the candle burned low, a soft whisper reached Kale's ear, a warning carried on the wind. Someone was coming, and the trials ahead would test them both like never before. The night was unnaturally quiet at Eldrath Castle. Even the sea seemed to hold its breath, leaving only a faint hiss of wind brushing the jagged cliffs. Prince Kael walked through the corridors with Lyra at his side, the letter and scrolls safely tucked away. Every shadow seemed alive, moving in ways that made the hairs on his neck stand up. He had learned that the castle itself held secrets, that walls could hear, and that the curse his mother had written about was not merely a story. It was alive, waiting for him. Lyra noticed the tension in his posture. "Kael," she said softly, "you are holding yourself too tight. The curse, it feeds on fear. You must not give it power over you." Kael shook his head. "I cannot help it. Every step I take feels like the walls are closing in. Every whisper in the halls, I feel eyes on me, even when there is no one there." She reached for his hand, a quiet anchor in the shadows. "Then take my hand. Let me be your anchor. We face it together." He hesitated, but finally his fingers brushed hers. The warmth that spread through him was unfamiliar and grounding. He wanted to stay in this moment forever, letting the world fade away, but the letter's warnings lingered in his mind. Danger was close, closer than they had imagined. Days passed, and the castle felt heavier. Kael and Lyra worked in secret, poring over ancient scrolls and texts in the hidden library. Each night revealed new dangers, subtle hints of treachery in the court, whispers of nobles who wanted Kael's throne for themselves, and strange omens in the weather. Storms that rose without warning, shadows that moved unnaturally, and dreams that left Kael shaken. One evening, Lyra discovered a fragment of a map hidden in one of the Queen's scrolls. It detailed the castle's underground chambers, areas even Kael had never known. "These passages," she whispered, "they could hide what we need, or they could hide dangers we are not ready for." Kael studied the map, his eyes narrowing. "I have faced the darkness in my dreams," he said. "I can face it in the real world. If this is part of breaking the curse, we cannot wait." Together, they planned a secret exploration of the lower chambers. Torches in hand, they descended narrow staircases, past damp stone walls that seemed to breathe. The air grew colder with every step, carrying a faint scent of earth and something older, something almost magical. The chambers were vast, a labyrinth of hallways and hidden rooms. Ancient symbols were carved into the stone, faintly glowing under the torchlight. Kael felt a strange pull in his chest, a recognition that this place had always been part of him, part of his destiny. Lyra's presence grounded him, and he reached for her hand instinctively. "This way," she whispered, following a series of markings on the walls. They arrived at a door unlike the others. Its surface was etched with intricate patterns, symbols of protection, and faint traces of the Queen's seal. Kael's heart pounded. This is where it begins," he said. "Whatever we find here could either break the curse or destroy me." Lyra placed a hand on the door. "Then we face it together, whatever comes, Kael." Inside, the chamber was filled with strange light, a soft glow emanating from runes carved into the floor. In the center lay a pedestal, and upon it a small crystal pulsating faintly. Kael approached, drawn to it. The crystal seemed to whisper, its glow reflecting the stormy sky outside. As he reached for it, a shadow moved across the room. Kael and Lyra turned, heartbeats quickening. From the darkness stepped a figure, draped in the garb of the castle guards, but with eyes cold and unreadable. "You should not be here, Prince," the figure said, voice low and dangerous. "These chambers are forbidden. Leave now or face consequences beyond your understanding." Kael's hand tightened around Lyra's. "I am the heir," he said firmly. "I have a right to know the secrets of my family. You will not stop me." The figure paused, as if weighing his words, then retreated into the shadows, leaving behind an eerie silence. The crystal's glow flickered, as if acknowledging Kael's courage. Lyra exhaled, trembling slightly. "This place, it feels alive," she whispered. "Like it knows us." Kael nodded. It knows and it tests us. We must be careful. The nights that followed were filled with whispers and visions. Kale dreamed of fire, shadowed halls, and a figure he could not recognize. Lyra stayed by his side, holding him, speaking words of comfort and grounding him in reality. The connection between them grew stronger, built on trust, courage, and a shared understanding of danger. One night, as the full moon bathed the castle in silver, Kale and Lyra discovered an old mirror in the chambers, framed with the queen's sigils. When Kale looked into it, he did not see his reflection. He saw a vision of himself on the throne, surrounded by darkness, his crown heavy with unseen forces. "This is what the curse wants," he said, voice tight. "It shows me fear, doubt, it wants me to fail." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then do not look away, face it. You are stronger than the shadows, and I am here, always." Kale reached for her, and in that touch he felt the courage he had been seeking. Together they stared into the mirror, refusing to blink, refusing to let fear take them. Slowly the shadows in the vision began to recede, leaving a faint light at the throne's center. "You see it?" Lyra asked. "That is hope, Kale. That is what you fight for." He nodded, heart pounding. "Then we continue. We find the truth. We break the curse." But danger had not forgotten them. In the corridors above, whispers of their nightly excursions reached the ears of those who sought to control Kale, to claim his throne for themselves. The Alpha King's advisors moved subtly, planting seeds of doubt and watching the prince's every move. Kale sensed it. "They are watching us," he said one night, sitting beside Lyra in the quiet of the tower. "The curse is not the only threat. There are those who would see me broken, even before the darkness tests me fully." Lyra squeezed his hand. "Then we must be smarter, faster, and we must trust each other completely." Kale leaned back, looking out at the moonlit cliffs. For the first time he felt the weight of the crown not as a burden, but as a responsibility he was learning to embrace. And he felt something else, a longing for Lyra, a need for her presence that went beyond friendship or duty. Their connection deepened, unspoken but powerful. Kale trusted her with his fears, his dreams, and now his heart. Lyra, too, found herself drawn to him, not for his power, but for his vulnerability, his courage, and the small moments of tenderness that slipped through the walls of his loneliness. One night, after a long day in the chambers, Kale and Lyra sat together in the high tower, the castle silent except for the distant crash of waves. Kale spoke quietly, almost to himself. "I have never felt like this before," he admitted. "I have never trusted anyone so fully. And yet I fear what comes next. The curse, the court, it all seems so heavy." Lyra rested her head against his shoulder. "Then we carry it together. The curse is not yours alone to bear, and neither is the crown." Kale's eyes met hers, and in the moonlight he saw not just a maid, but a partner, a guide, someone who could stand with him against the shadows. And for the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope that perhaps he could overcome not only the curse, but the loneliness that had haunted him since childhood. But the castle was not done testing them. The following night, while Kale and Lyra planned their next move, a distant scream echoed through the halls. It was muffled, far away, but unmistakable. Kale's heart leapt. Someone was in danger, and the shadows were moving faster than ever. Lyra grabbed his hand. "We must go," she said urgently. "Whatever this is, we face it together." They ran through the corridors, torches casting flickering light against the stone walls. The scream repeated, closer now, echoing through the castle like a warning. Kale's fear rose, but he refused to let it control him. He thought of the mirror, of the crystal, of Lyra's hand in his, and of the words in his mother's letter. Courage, trust, and love, they were his weapons. When they reached the source, they found a servant, pale and trembling, pointing toward the northern tower. "There, something is wrong," the servant stammered. "I saw shadows moving and they spoke my name." Kale exchanged a glance with Lyra. The curse was not just tests and visions anymore. It was alive, reaching into the castle, seeking to unsettle them, to weaken their courage. Kale's jaw tightened. "Then we go," he said. "We do not run, we face it together." Lyra nodded, eyes steady. "Always." Hand in hand, they ascended the northern tower, hearts pounding, the shadows growing longer with every step. And as they reached the top, Cale realized that the final trial of the curse was not a creature, nor a trap, it was a choice. To trust, to act, to risk everything for hope and for each other. The wind howled outside, the castle trembled, and the darkness waited, but Cale was no longer alone. And with Lyra by his side, he would face whatever came next. The first light of dawn had not yet touched the castle of Eldrath. The night was deep and heavy, shadows pooling in every corner. Prince Cale and Lyra ascended the northern tower, hearts pounding, torches flickering against the stone walls. The scream they had heard earlier still echoed faintly in Cale's mind. Every step carried the weight of the curse, every shadow a test of courage. At the top of the tower they found the source of the darkness, a chamber sealed by ancient runes, the air thick with a strange energy. The crystal Cale had seen in the underground chambers now floated above a stone pedestal, its glow stronger, more insistent. Around it shadows writhed, forming shapes that seemed alive, whispering words that chilled the blood. Cale's chest tightened. "This is it," he said, voice low but steady. "This is the heart of the curse." Lyra placed her hand on his arm. "Then we face it together. No fear, Cale. Trust yourself and trust me." The shadows surged as if in response, moving closer, testing him. Cale stepped forward, holding his torch high. The whispers grew louder, voices twisting, speaking of fear, doubt, and failure. But Lyra's presence was a constant, a steadying force against the chaos. "You are stronger than the darkness," she said firmly. "You have the courage to face this, and I am here." Cale closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. The letter from his mother, the scrolls in the library, and Lyra's unwavering trust filled him with a determination he had never known. He opened his eyes and stepped toward the crystal. The shadows recoiled, but not completely. They still swirled like a storm around him. The crystal pulsed, brighter and brighter, and a voice, soft yet commanding, echoed in Cale's mind. "Only by embracing your fear and trusting your heart can the curse be broken." Cale looked at Lyra. She nodded, understanding without words. Hand in hand, they stepped together toward the crystal, feeling the shadows push against them. The darkness tested him with visions, visions of failure, loss, and isolation. Each vision threatened to make him retreat, but Cale clenched his teeth, focusing on Lyra's hand, on her unwavering presence. "I will not run," he whispered. "Not anymore." The shadows roared, reaching for him, but Lyra stepped forward, holding him steady. "You are not alone," she said. "You are stronger than this. We are stronger together." At that moment the crystal's light burst outward, filling the chamber with a warm, golden glow. The shadows screamed and dissipated, vanishing like smoke in the wind. The curse at last was broken, not by power, not by fear, but by courage, trust, and love. Cale sank to his knees, overwhelmed but relieved. Lyra knelt beside him, holding his hands. "It is over," she whispered softly. "The darkness cannot touch you now." Cale looked at her, eyes glistening with tears. I could not have done this without you." Lyra smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "You did it. You trusted yourself. You faced it. I only guided you." For the first time in years, Cale felt the weight of the castle lift. The halls no longer felt cold and oppressive. The wind outside softened, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of a new day. But the trials of the curse were not the only challenges Cale faced. Word of his secret excursions and the Queen's letter had reached the ears of the Alpha King's advisors. Some sought to manipulate Cale, others to claim his throne. Cale knew that even with the curse broken, he had to confront the treachery within his court. He returned to the throne room, Lyra at his side, to face the council. The nobles watched him with suspicion and veiled hostility, expecting fear, hesitation, or weakness. Cale's heart pounded, but he felt a new strength coursing through him. He had faced darkness, trusted his heart, and found courage. Now he could face them. "Esteemed council," he began, voice steady and commanding, "I have learned much in the past days, truths that were hidden, dangers that were ignored, and shadows that sought to weaken me. The curse upon my line has tested me, and I have endured. I am no longer a boy who hides in the dark. I am the heir to this kingdom, and I will rule with wisdom, courage, and justice." The nobles murmured among themselves, surprised by his confidence. Kale continued, "Those who would betray me or seek to manipulate the throne, beware. I see the truth now, and I will not be swayed by fear or deceit." Lyra stood quietly beside him, a steady presence, and Kale felt a surge of gratitude. Her guidance, courage, and trust had brought him to this moment. Together, they had faced the darkness, and now the court would see that he was no longer a boy haunted by shadows. One of the more ambitious nobles stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "And this maiden," he said, glancing at Lyra, "what part does she play in your rule?" Kale met his gaze firmly. "She is my guide, my friend, and my confidant. Her courage has saved me, and her wisdom has guided me. I will trust those who prove themselves worthy, regardless of their station, and she has proven herself." A silence fell over the room. The nobles were taken aback by his conviction. For the first time, Kale's voice carried not only authority, but the weight of someone who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. With the council addressed, Kale returned to the tower with Lyra. The dawn had begun to break over Eldrath Castle, casting golden light on the cliffs and sea. The storm from the past nights had faded, leaving a sense of calm and renewal. Kale stood at the window, looking out at the horizon. "I never imagined the world could feel like this," he said softly, "peaceful, bright, and full of hope." Lyra joined him, leaning against his shoulder. "It is only the beginning," she said. "There will still be challenges, still be trials, but you are no longer alone. And together we can face anything." Kale turned to her, eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper, something he had almost forgotten existed. "Lyra, I do not know how to thank you. You have given me courage, trust, and hope. You have given me more than I ever imagined." Lyra smiled, a soft warmth in her eyes. "You only need to live, Kale. That is thanks enough." The castle stirred with life as the first people of Eldrath began their day. Sunlight glinted off the towers, and the halls no longer seemed oppressive. Kale felt the weight of the past lifting, the burden of the curse gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and clarity. Later in the gardens, Kale and Lyra walked together among blooming flowers and the gentle rustle of leaves. The world felt alive, vibrant, and full of possibility. For the first time, Kale allowed himself to dream, not of escaping his fears, but of building a life where courage, love, and trust were stronger than any darkness. "Do you think we will always face challenges?" Lyra asked softly. Kale took her hand in his, fingers intertwining naturally. "Yes, but I also know we will face them together, and that is enough. You are my strength, Lyra, and I hope to be yours as well." Her eyes glistened and she nodded. "Always, Kale, always." For the first time, Kale felt not only the strength of a prince, but the power of love, trust, and partnership. The curse had tested him, and the court had challenged him, but he had risen above both, guided by courage, insight, and the unwavering presence of the woman who had stood beside him through it all. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light over Eldrath, Kale and Lyra stood together on the cliffs overlooking the sea. The waves crashed below, a reminder of life's ever-changing currents, but for the first time, Kale felt unafraid. The darkness no longer controlled him. He had faced it, embraced his heart, and chosen trust, courage, and love. The letter from his mother, the crystal in the underground chambers, the shadowed corridors, all had led him here. And with Lyra by his side, he understood that the future was no longer something to fear. It was something to embrace. Kale looked at the horizon, then at Lyra. "Whatever comes next, we face it together," he said, his voice strong and steady. Lyra smiled, and the wind carried her words softly to him. "Together always." And for the first time in years, Prince Kale, heir to the Alpha King, felt truly free. Free from shadows, free from fear, and free to step into the life he was meant to live, one of courage, wisdom, and love. The dawn of a new era had begun, and with it, the promise of hope, redemption, and a bond stronger than any curse.